So, welcome everyone once more to the webinar on Unflipped, Meeting RSI Guidelines with Richer Discussions and Video Critique in Online Classes Without Flip. So, without further ado, we are joined today by Kelly Maxwell, who is an instructional designer and lead faculty trainer at the Iowa Community College Online Consortium, and Marcus Poppets, who is the CEO and founder at Harmonize Learning. I know that they have a fantastic presentation prepared for y'all today, so at this time, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn it over to them. The floor is all yours.
We hope it's a fantastic presentation. That was a lot of pressure, though.
Was, oh my.
Yeah, so a little more elaboration on who we are, and then I'll go through a little bit of what we're going to cover in this webinar so you can kind of orient yourself. So I have with me Kelly, who is one of those inspirational teachers who just does cool things with video in particular is what we're going to focus on today. But so what we're going to run through is there's this big question around instructor presence, and now the feds have actually put some guidelines in place called the RSI, Regular and Substantive Interaction. That really is all about instructor presence in the classroom. And so when we are thinking about instructor presence and how does that line up the guidelines and how do we do that in discussions, how do we do that in video? And a lot of instructors had been using Flip, which was a free video discussion platform to be able to accomplish this. And so there's been a lot of questing for what tools are out there to help replace Flip. So we're kind of wander through things of like, I'll be managing the show as it were. I'll go over what RSI is, some of the common problems and complaints we hear from students around discussions. We're going to go into some of the tools that people are using to replace Flip. And then we will roll into sort of a brainstorming session of like, here's some cool things that Kelly's doing. We'll insert some things that I've heard of our instructors doing with video so that you can also understand like what students like and what is engaging and how can you quickly accomplish some of these RSI goals without having to rely on purely the technology that's inside of your LMS, although you can accomplish it with your LMS. It just requires you to jump through some more technology hoops, and it's kind of hard to engage students. So that's a general outline of what we're going to cover. I am from Harmonize. We build a discussion platform. I'm going to use Harmonize to demo some of the things Kelly's doing, but the goal is not to make this all about Harmonize. The goal is to make this about instructor presence, video use, and creative ways to do that inside of your class. And that can be video, it can be screen share, etc. And so you'll see me sharing my screen and showing Harmonize stuff, but the concepts that we're talking about will apply regardless of the tools you're using. Logistics wise, I also have David with us from our company who can help answer questions, and he can sort of see if there's things that need to be discussed verbally that come up in the chat. So if you do want to put your questions in the Q&A or the chat, or you can raise your hand if you have a question. We really would rather this be interactive than it just be me speaking to the crowd and handing over to Kelly to speak to the crowd. So please get your questions here. All right, I'm going to share my screen and dive in. Go. All right, so I'm going to do a few slides and then we're going to turn it over to Kelly, and I'll continue to screen share and sort of anchor with some visuals of what this can look like. But first and foremost, we need to define what is RSI. Heavy text, heavy slide here. You'll get these slides after the fact so you can work through them. But what it boils down to is the instructor has to be present in two ways regularly throughout the class. And so the feds have actually defined this as you can teach directly, you can do this in Zoom, you can be in person, whatever it is, that is definitively instructor presence and interacting with your students. You can give feedback on homework and on any piece of work that the student is doing, that counts. You can respond to questions about the content. So if you have a Q&A forum in your class or something like that, you can do it there. The one we're going to focus on today is facilitating a group discussion, because this is sort of the heart of and the most commonly used, I would say, way to engage students inside the class. And as long as you're picking two of those four, you're good as far as the feds are concerned. And there is another one of other as approved by accreditors. That's just a fancy way of saying, like, if you're doing something cool, go do it. That's awesome. They're not going to penalize you for doing something cool. So don't worry too much about it. That's how I read it anyway. I'm no expert. We also get into the regular side of things, which we'll talk about a little bit, like how do you manage your time as the instructor? How do you make sure you're engaging at the right level? And this is totally, of course, dependent on your course and the pacing and such, but just remember that it can't be once at the start of the semester or once at the end. It needs to be somewhat common throughout the class. A lot of schools that I talk to define this as weekly. The instructor needs to be present in the discussion or teaching or something weekly, so that we are making sure the students stay engaged. And then you need to be able to pay attention to what's happening in your class, monitoring it, making sure that that you do find those students who are drifting away and such. All right, so so that's the basis of RSI. Really, it just means instructor presence, like be there, answering questions, guiding the discussion, giving feedback. It does not mean giving a quiz. It does not mean have them watch a video with no chance for interaction. It does not mean content consumption unless there's an interactive component to it where you can give them feedback. So don't think of it as a passive consumption of content. Think of it as if you were in the classroom teaching, nudging students, reviewing what they're doing, giving them feedback, grading their papers. All of those things count in terms of what you're doing. Elizabeth asks for the source to this. I don't have it handy, but if you go to WCET's website, they have a whole bunch of information on these policies. They're a great source for centralized policies on this. And I'll see if I can dig something up and get it over to Caitlin to include with the follow-up if that's possible. All right, so let's talk about facilitating group discussions. So this is where a lot of people were solving some of these problems by using Flip. Flip was a free tool that allowed you to have your students record video and respond to each other. And so it was kind of a rich asynchronous video component. It was owned or it was bought by Microsoft. They made it free no longer and so rather suddenly took it away from a lot of people. And that's kind of what prompted this is that, you know, what tools are out there? How can we share? Because I'm pretty familiar with the space because Harmonize does discussions that are video and screen share centric, and I can kind of point you in some of the directions that people are talking about and what they can do. But the problems with group discussions, the thing that makes them hard is that students hate them. Instructors often hate them because they're just checking the box. They're like, I'm going to write a paragraph and you're going to respond. It's one post, it's 2 comments. It is dull. It is, I don't know, Kelly, what are your take on discussions and the pain points of them? Do you agree with that? Everybody hates them or some people hate them or?
Yeah, that's why mine are titled the dreaded introduction discussion.
Lead them in to start with. Own it, as it were.
I lean into that. I lean into how they hate that.
Yeah, so yeah, a lot of students just consider it phoning in. It's something that they have to do, they're required to do, they don't see the value in it. And so that's some of the things we're going to talk about. How do you make these more of a touch point? And I'll say, like, you know, we do a lot of this work with schools when they are first trying to use Harmonize. They will run surveys of their students, and the students that love their discussions the most and will actually say things like the discussions are now the best part of the class are those instructors who are using video in the class. Because the instructor is there, they are actually talking to the students, they're responding to the students. And so the question is, how do we make it easier for our instructors to be able to accomplish that? Because right now it's difficult, it's painful, it's time consuming, and it's not sort of the norm. And so keep in mind that it's all about what your students want, and you can ask them what they want and what they prefer in terms of feedback. Kelly made that point when we were planning out this webinar. But it's also just, you know, they come in, they procrastinate, they do things too last minute. It's always the same. It's always like comment on the readings type of thing, which is not a great activity for them. So getting some thumbs down from Kelly. So we're going to roll into some examples that Kelly has talked about and with me when we were just coming through her most recent class. And most of them are so cool. Well, I should say all of them are so cool, otherwise we wouldn't have included them, but some of them are way cooler than others even, I would say. And so this is kind of the inspiration of how do we get into it. Before we go into it, which tools can you use to do this? So if you're sitting there and you're like, I use Canvas discussions, I know it does videos. Yes, you can use your LMS, usually has some sort of video recording feature in it. Canvas Studio. They're difficult to use. You'll get this screen deck after the fact. I included links to those I could find that actually how to do video. D2L, I struggled to find a direct link to a page of how to do video in their class. And I've seen some reports in the chat that my audio is cutting out. Is that true for everyone or?
It's not true for me. I can hear you just fine.
Okay. Maybe I'm paranoid. All right, so when you're looking at it, the problems are it's just hard to use. It's not an easy path for your students to participate, so we want to make it easy. Doesn't always caption the videos, often does not caption the videos, which creates accessibility problems. So one of the big trends is if we are encouraging students to do more video, how do we keep that accessible? How do we make sure everything's auto captioned and has that type of information? The most prominent, I would say, free software to replace Flip that people are settling on is called Padlet. I'm actually going to use Padlet in this webinar as a feedback mechanism so you can see what that looks like. It has some limitations in the free version because it's free. You can only do 2-minute videos. It's outside of your LMS, so you're having to send your students off to a URL to participate. But you'll get a feel for what that looks like because I've created a Padlet for sharing some of the ideas around how can we do different video discussions and such inside the class. So you'll get a feel for what that looks like. Make sure you check in with your central teaching facility or your IT department. Are they okay with you using Padlet? Has it been vetted? Those types of administration things. But it is the free alternative that people are settling on to Flip because free is good. We do have some people use Zoom, Google Meets, Teams, etc., but that's often recording it elsewhere, uploading it. There's big file size concerns and such with that. It does have a plus in that this is how they're going to be working in their business lives outside of school, so that's a great thing to teach them, but is not super viable in terms of ease of use. Harmonize is what I'm going to be demoing it. The problem with it is that it's not free. We do free pilots, but if your school doesn't have a license to Harmonize, you won't be able to use it. Having said that, we are obviously happy to help you sign up for Harmonize if you like. We'll throw a link, or David can throw a link out to the free pilot now and at the end, etc. So you can see what that looks like. But it does require your school to say, okay, yeah, let's try it for free. So that's, I think, we want to make sure you have an access to do this in some way. If you can't get your school to do any of the tools we're looking at, Padlet is your free option, and we'll dive into it. All right, I'm gonna jump in and give the Padlet URL here. I'm gonna put this out in the chat so that you have a place to participate. Put this out to everyone. All right, so here's the Padlet we're going to use. We often use these in our webinars, like we use Padlet often, even though we build Harmonize, because it's a great free way to, I've given you a link, jump into it, and you can start participating. And I've seeded with 2 or 3 different things here for you to be able to play with. As we are going through Kelly's ideas, I'm going to turn this over to Kelly real soon now. This is where you can, if it sparks some other idea for you, put it in into the Padlet here. And you can create cards with the little plus button down at the bottom, or you can just add comments on existing cards. If you have feedback of, well, how would that work on XYZ or etc., you can put them here. And this can continue after the webinar if you want. This can be a living document. I'm not going to delete it. It's going to stay there, so you can use it as a resource. So share whatever ideas you have in there. I know it's often hard to get people from webinars into external things to share because you're trying to pay attention to the webinar and participate in the Padlet. But it'll also give you a feel for what the experience can be like for your students if you were using Padlet to do this. All right, I'm going to jump into Harmonize, and I'm going to turn this over to Kelly. And Kelly, I ordered these when you were out on vacation, so I will prompt you for the different topics we're going to be talking about, and then you can give your feedback on them and what you're thinking and how they worked with your students as examples of how to infuse video or interesting things into the discussion so that there's actually something to interact with when you're going into it. So I'm going to now open up Harmonize, and we're going to start with the dreaded introduction topic where Kelly does all kinds of cool things. The one that she mentioned to me that was super compelling was actually using an AI story writer to write your personal story about things. But Kelly, without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you and we'll dive into the dreaded introduction topic.
So before we get started with that, I just have to preface this with, I was an online student. I went back to school when I was 28 years old. I was raising my children. So my only option was online. And I had my associates, my bachelor's, all online. And then I went to school face-to-face for my master's, and then my doctorate was online. So I have a lot of experience in online learning, and I hated, double hate, ultra hated my discussion threads. So when I started teaching face-to-face and then started teaching online, it was a big deal for me to make not only my discussion threads actually something that was useful, but entertaining and exciting and fun. So all of my discussions that I use throughout my modules online are something that students actually they're not, hey, respond 200, 200 words or whatever, there's something to actually go towards what they're working on. But the dreaded introduction discussion is something I title it that because everybody has long hated, I hated discussions. But I do it for fun to just get their toes in the water to know our discussions are going to be a little different in our course. I don't want you to hate it going in. So this particular AI is for a lit class I'm doing. And I use AI a lot. I teach students how to use it in my courses. I'm not afraid of it. So this one, I found a free AI story generator. And I gave the students an option. They could either write their own creative story or they could use this. So the prompt was, I modeled it for them. So I went in and I wrote a 200-word, just a baseline. My name is Kelly. I'm going to tell you some embarrassing things about me real quick. My name is Kelly. I've been married and divorced twice. I'm very clumsy. I go on hikes. I have a dog, 4 children. I live in Central Illinois. Please write a 200-word short story about me that I can use to introduce myself to my class. And I would like it to be written in the theme of comedy. And then I put it in here and it wrote a hilarious short story about me. And I went back and put it in my discussion thread. And that is how it introduced itself to my class. So I wrote the assignment to the students to say, I would like you to do this. Please do the following. Go to this link, write a bio asking it to do just what I just did. And this 200 words, and then pick a genre, drama, horror, I don't know, comedy, love. One guy chose drama, and then like his wife and him split up, and he said, I could never read her this short story. It was so tragic. But anyway, and then for the response, each student had to go out and choose a few classmates that they had to read through it and then come up with a creative title response for their friends. And it was, for their friends, for their colleagues, for their peers. And it was just so neat to then read not only how they had described themselves, but then what AI did, and then see their little creative story titles. And everyone was just bouncing back and forth. And people were on everybody's. It wasn't just 1 or 2. Students ended up going through and reading more than one little short story just because they were so funny. And some of them, and they were all very different because everyone described themselves differently and everybody's algorithms are different. So what AI pulls in is different for everyone. So it ended up being this really neat way that everyone kind of got to know each other that wasn't quite so bland. So that was a neat thing. Did you read us yours, Marcus? Oh, you're muted. Oh, you're still muted. Oh.
Oh, I was muted. How embarrassing. It's like I haven't presented every day of my life. So what I found interesting about this was that I was able to give it a prompt, but this also teaches the students that you have control over what you make AI do. It really depends on the inputs to get the outputs. And I took this a step further when I was setting up the example, is that I asked it to tie whatever we were talking about to my personal life. So I'm telling you about my life, and then I'm like, here's this class. Why am I taking a physics class? Well, how does physics relate to what I'm actually doing? And so I asked it to relate physics to my personal story somehow. I made it a comedy excerpt, and then it wrote this for me, talking about my main hobby, which is mountain biking, and how I was a failed high school teacher, and how I combined the two to run an ed tech company. And it's funny, a little too close to home on the failed teacher part of things. But then I brought that back in, submitted that as a post inside of Harmonize, and then I did an actual video reflection of what that felt like. And then people can come back through and either do the titling or they can respond in video to it. And the whole point of these introductions, I'm not sure how people are familiar with Quality Matters, but this is super important to your class because one of the Quality Matters rubrics is get your students to know each other. And this allows you to know your students, which means when you are then present in the classroom, you know about your students and they know about each other. So they are more comfortable. They've exposed something of themselves in a fun way. They've learned to use the tools in a fun way. So if you were going to do this in Padlet, they can learn to use Padlet. They can learn Harmonize with video in a very, very easy way of like, oh, I just came in and created a new post and I learned how to do the video recorder and Now I'm recording video reflection straight in, and this is not academic, right? This is like, all I have to do is talk about myself, and I don't have to worry about getting graded on it. I actually have this one set up to be auto graded, so that it's just participation points type of thing. Super key. Then the next things that we're going to talk about, if you have done this first, it will go better, because if you can get your students talking and interacting in non-text ways and ways that are personal to them, fantastic type of thing.
And I usually will do that video, like, and we're going to show that, I guess, in a few minutes, but I will do a video like he's doing, and in almost all of my introduction posts. But in this specific one, I chose comedy to introduce myself because students will remember that silly thing about me, and then they're a little more willing to do something a little silly too, but then they remember that introduction, right? And like Marcus said, the quality matters information. We all know, you know, the checklists. They remember a little something about one of their classmates, and they're going to be a little more willing in the other discussions than, oh, oh gosh, I remember what Marcus said. I'm going to hop in on his discussion thread and help him out with his research now, because I remember he said he fell down that mountain when he went biking, and I need to find some research for him.
And mountain biking is dangerous, so he may not be with us for long, type of thing. Quick, get him his feedback before he crashes his bike.
Right.
So humanizing instructor presence when you're in here. This is also where we often see in our discussion reporting on what instructors are doing, they actually spend a lot of time in this one, even though it's not academic, throwing out quick quips and comments and video feedback and such to the students, because this one is probably the most fun to interact in, but it also lets the students know you're here. I am here. I am responding to you as we're going into the class. And so I can't stress this enough. Super important. Get some sort of introduction in place. And I loved this one because it starts to lace in AI, which all students are fascinated with. I actually played with this AI generator through 2 or 3 different versions because I was just like, oh, cool, comedy. Okay, cool. What are the different things? And I'd use AI all the time, but it still was fascinating. So
It was a lot of fun.
all right. Okay, so the next one that you brought up was your scavenger hunt through the class. So let me actually delete my draft I was working on here, and come back into, I have a single discussion set up here with all the examples because that was a convenient way to do it. Each of these is a student post. So if you just know what you're looking at when I'm diving through things, they're all by me because I was posting to set things up, but you can get a feel for, oops, not that one. The next one is the one that had the video walkthrough of the class. So give us a feel for what you were doing and accomplishing this Kelly, and kind of how.
So for each course that I build, I have a little welcome module, and within that I have a video that I show them how to navigate this course. And I basically, I come in here and I do a video where I share my screen. And within that, I just kind of do a very quick, hey, everybody, just so that we all don't get lost, because, you know, sometimes it's the first time they've seen this. I have a lot of courses that are dual enrollment, so I have high school students, but some of them are college students. And for the consortium I teach for, a lot of the colleges have, you know, different platforms. So some of the students will be at a college, be at SWIC, and some will be at Eastern Iowa. So a lot of the colleges just look different. So it's important to me to have a navigational video so they jump in, they can be successful. So I'll share my screen and I'll be like, we're all just gonna go through here like it's a roadmap. Let's check it out. And it's really handy that I can do this, so we can walk through the course real quick. And when I'm doing that, you know, I'll say, this is where we start. We're gonna ease in. Here's your first, assignment. And I'll be saying things throughout, like, and then if you go over here to modules, I'd rather you do that than go to the to-do list. Because guess what? If you just go to the to-do list, you're going to miss all kinds of things, So I'm giving them tips and tricks as I share the screen, so they're hearing my voice. But I also, as I'm doing this, will mention things about, my life, and throughout the course, I'll have on pages, I'll have, oh, here's a picture of my son. He's in the Navy and he just got back from Gaza. Here's a little tiny picture of him on his ship. And then now let's go over here to this lecture, and you won't want to miss this, or you'll totally not know what you're doing, So anyway, so when I'm done with that, I'll have sometimes a poll down here underneath, because we can build a poll. So underneath my little video, I'll put a poll in here, and Marcus can add that and show you all. And I can ask questions on the poll. Where was my son located? And I can just ask it. And I can just do all that right there on a ship, in module 3, and I can ask all of these questions. And then it's so fun to see what everybody says. Who was paying attention? I could watch that poll go on and off. But I can also ask, you know, real questions, because this is a discussion thread. I can make this an actual assignment. So this is a video. I am, you know, navigating the course. But if I assign this like a discussion thread, I can put real questions on here, right? So where was Wyatt? Where was he at? And I can set this up just because of how this platform works as to where the this would come just to me, to where I would only see the answers. And Marcus can talk about that later. But there's just so many little things that I can do. But that's how I use it. But I like to leave it public, because then some students can be like, no, Wyatt was not there. I saw Wyatt on a ship in module 4. Like you weren't paying any attention. And it's really cute. But they also see important information, and they end up chatting back and forth. And I will leave little silly quips about me, but just information they need to know in the class.
Yeah, and if I'm linking this back to RSI as well, like this is a great place to prompt your students to ask questions about the course structure, the layout of the course, the pacing of the course, because it's a key component is that they need to know what's coming. And one of the key RSI guidelines is answering questions about course material. And if you can do this, I don't know how often they do that, or do they focus on Wyatt because they just really want to find Wyatt?
They look desperately for him. But I have a rule that, and I'm different, but I think it's because I'm an instructional designer, and so many times students cannot get things turned in on Sunday nights at 11:59 because everybody has that due date. So I have a due date of 6 o'clock on Sundays. And I stress that in this video so many times. In each module, I'll go through and say, hey, reminder, 6 o'clock. And so that is something that I ask them. Hey, when was it due? Do you remember my weird time? You know. So anything that you really want that is in your syllabus that you think, hey, they should see this in the syllabus, you know, that they're not reading, put it in this video that you've created and you want them to discuss.
Yeah, and we see, like, so we do multiple due dates for discussion, so we will put them into the to-do list for you. But one of the big complaints is if you're not using Harmonize, how do you get your students to do it? So covering that in your introduction video, great way to get them used to the fact that they are going to have to participate early enough to actually allow RSI to happen. Because if they don't post till 11 p.m., I don't know about you, I'm asleep by 11 p.m. So I'm not going to respond to them in time to actually keep the discussion going. So getting your students in early, super important. If you're using Harmonize, we'll do that for you. If you're not, make sure you cover it, that they know this is a common requirement for you as well.
And you can have them share their screen back in your discussion. Be like, show me where I said this was.
And I will cover some of the screen share stuff as well, but I saw there were some math instructors in there, and a lot of times math instructors are like, well, what do I do with this? How do I teach facts? I teach facts, I'm in math. But you can actually have your students, you know, either screen share their work and talk about where they got confused, or you can have them, you know, upload an image and actually show their work by taking a picture. This works in both Padlet and Harmonize. Take a picture and put it up there, and Harmonize will let you draw on it, so you could actually be like, oh, you had a sign error here. Demonstrations of knowledge. So let's take a moment to pause and remember that ChatGPT is out there, right? If your discussion and your demonstrations of knowledge are all text-based, ChatGPT can do them probably better than a lot of your students can, depending on what level your students are. And that's kind of sad to say, but true. So if you can get your students to demonstrate knowledge by screen sharing or doing video reflections or uploading image resources associated with what they're doing, you are just naturally sidestepping the whole ChatGPT is running my discussion thing. So it's becoming more and more important that we don't just rely on text-only discussions, because it can just be a bunch of students using AI to write things and responding to each other with AI. And you can use things like we do Turnitin integration, and there's these AI detectors out there, but you have to be careful with those because they are not correct 100% of the time, and that causes problems as well. So if you just sidestep it all, you know, give them a video reflection, give them something to do as we're going into it. Remember, you can put things into the Padlet. I see some people are actually participating with the Padlet as well. So I see someone actually did a video introduction. That's fantastic, and wrote some stuff in comboed video. So make sure that if you are having some ideas or you're seeing some things here, you can actually go put that into the Padlet so it lasts as well. And I see Nicole's putting out in the chat. She actually has her students walk through and talk about how they solved the problem. So that demonstration knowledge is super, super important. Cool. And Alex, yeah, I think that's a great point in the chat. If you're not in the chat as well, the community members have things to say that I'm not saying that are as fascinating as what we're saying. So you should participate there too. Encouraging your students to use AI in a constructive way, just like Kelly did with her intro of like, it really matters what you give the AI. So you can actually design your examples to do that. And Kelly has one when we get a bit further on in here that we can take a look at. Actually, let's jump to that one now. Your chat GPT screen share, how are they actually interacting with chat GPT for the particular assignment? If you want to talk through this one.
So I use this a lot. I will use this in Comp 2. I teach Comp 1, Comp 2, public speaking and literature. So kind of across the board. And what I like to screen share with students because I'm trying to teach them how to use it as a tool. Like kind of how like when we all started using Google, and you got to use Google the right way in order for it to be successful, you know? But also I need to teach them that everybody's Google search is different too, based upon where you're at in your algorithm. So your chat GPT is the same thing. It's all going to be different. So a lot of times when I have an assignment with students, I will say, well, I want to see your thought process when you use chat GPT, because we need to make sure you're creating good, strong queries that will help you get great results that you can then edit. Because I don't know if you've ever heard the chess analogy. Like if a human plays against chess against chat GPT is going to win, right? But if a human and chat GPT play against chat GPT or AI, the human and AI are going to beat it, because humans think, you know, we think outside the box and AI thinks patterns, right? So we need the combination. So I'm trying to teach them, that. So anyway, long story short, I will say, all right, so here's your assignment. I would like for you, we're all doing a demonstration speech. We'll just use my speech class. And I would like for you to think of, your one way that you can actually involve your audience in a demonstration speech. How can you do this? So I want you to ask ChatGPT, hey, I am doing a demonstration on how to bake brownies. I know how to do this. I've been baking brownies my entire life. I have my outline. I have my main points. I even have my attention getter. But for the life of me, I cannot think of how can I involve my audience with my speech without like having them taste my brownies. What is one way? Can you give me 3 different ideas that I can make my speech interactive with my audience? And so I'll have my student like ask that query, and then ChatGPT will fire something back. And then, I'll have the student say, okay, well, that's a neat idea, but I was thinking more, we'll see where that goes. And so based upon what they end up, coming up with, I'll have them put this within, they'll have to share this. And then they will have, then they have to record a reflection about their experience. And they'll talk about, okay, so this is what I ended up garnering. ChatGPT gave me these ideas. There were, 3 really good ones, 3 really, what in the world? I can't do that. And I am going to end up, moving this direction because I think I can do this. I never would have thought about it. And this is what I can incorporate. Then one of their classmates pops in and they record a comment on it. They say, you know what? I never would have thought of these things. And I like the way you pose this question. Like, I wouldn't have thought to ask it like that. I like your wording, and where you went with it is not a direction I would have went. And I think I'm going to go this way. So it's really fascinating because then they get so much feedback. They get a student's idea, they get ChatGPT's idea, and everybody kind of gets to see what ChatGPT did is different from their own, even because everybody's results were different based upon the way they asked their question. And so it really teaches them not only how to develop their own questions, but how AI works. So it's been really fascinating watching it all work in real time, and then watching the students see how it works and see everybody's results and see how much is useful and how much isn't. So, anyway.
And the thing that I love about all these ideas is that it's not just about instructor presence. She's really about creating something that's cool, the students want to participate in. And then frankly, it's going to be more fun for her to read and respond to, because who wants to respond to 7 students or 37 students saying the same thing about the discussion prompt over and over again? So how can you create ways for the students to be able to make this their own? Every response is different in some way, and then they can actually look at each other's responses and see how they're different. And then you as the instructor can just jump in, and if there's a student who used it incorrectly, great moment for you to jump in and be like, well, here, you just asked it to write the essay for you. That's not what we were looking for. You didn't give it enough constructive feedback up front. So that's where
I've
you're present.
actually had students do that before. I've had students in the reply go, you know, your question didn't result in anything for you because you didn't ask it a question. You just told it, I need an idea for this. I had a student call someone out and say, you just asked it for, you know, and they said, that's why you didn't get anything. And that's why
Nice.
this wasn't helpful. It's been really fascinating. And then within reflections, I've had students say, this is so nice to have someone show me what this can do.
Nice. So yeah, so once again, create something interesting for your students to do that they want to participate in, that they're engaging with each other, and then the rest of your world is easy. We will pop up the students who are not engaging as much as their peers, so maybe you know who to call out when you're actually in there participating, but you don't have to respond to every single person's post.
Yeah.
I don't know, Kelly, I'm guessing you don't, because that's an enormous workload, right?
Yeah, I have about 300 students, so it's really hard, but I do click that watch topic button that you have, which I'm very thankful for. And that sends me a note and lets me know anytime someone has posted. And I will go in and pretty much, you know, hit a like at least, or a little, you know, great idea, or try and post. If I can't do a video comment back, I'll type something, but I usually try and interact with everybody. And you know, as far as my teacher time, I respond every day.
Nice. You are extremely regular. I would say you're on the high end of what instructors do. Most instructors are not in every day because I mean, y'all are overworked and it's busy time. So, all right, let's roll on to the next one. You are in speech. I have here, I was going to dive a little bit into doing presentations, screen sharing PowerPoints, and then I was going to highlight something about Harmonize that's unique compared to Padlet, which is our ability to critique videos and such. So, first and foremost, like struggles of doing PowerPoint presentations in general, of like technology wise. I know you said you just switched to Harmonize for this versus, I think you were using Canvas Studio before, is that right?
I was, and where I teach, we have a lot of very rural students. And for some reason, I don't know if it has to do with broadband, but they just have a really hard time uploading in their areas. I don't know why. I am not, although I work in tech, I don't work in the background in tech. And for some reason, a lot of students can upload their videos much faster into Harmonize. I wish I could explain why. I don't have the.
I wish I could too.
I don't know why. But yeah, so they do upload them into here, but it is a lot easier for them to do I do a lot of podcasts and I do a lot of webinars in my public speaking classes because I feel like that's more real world for now, what they're going to be doing in college, but also in their careers. And yeah, they're able to share their slideshows a lot easier than they could in studio.
And this, I think, is a key of like, if you are pushing your students to do something, like, for example, I mentioned Zoom and Google Meets can do video recording. If you have rural students on poor broadband, do not go that route because the files are going to be large. Canvas Studio apparently has similar issues. So just be cognizant of where your students are at and offer them choices as well of how they can respond to things. Obviously, if it's a PowerPoint speech presentation, there's not a whole lot of options for them to do. But do they want to respond in audio? Do they want to respond in video? Do they want to respond in some other creative way? Make sure you give them that student choice. A thing that Harmonize allows you to do, just to highlight and brag on our tool for a minute, you can actually pause videos and leave timestamp commentary. So I grabbed the presentation, I recorded a quick little, this is our Unflipped presentation, and then I responded to it and commented on a particular slide that I thought was too text heavy. So you can give very substantive feedback on videos and presentations by doing this. If you're doing this in Padlet and something, you would just have to say like, oh, at minute 1, your slide was blah, blah, blah. And at minute 3, you know, here's how it looked, et cetera, versus allowing students to come in. And we give these tools to students as well, so you can get them critiquing each other's. And I don't know, Kelly, how much you do that for your presentations. Are these students peer reviewing each other's speeches and presentations, or is it more you reviewing their speeches and presentations?
I leave comments on videos most often, but I do have students do peer reviews, and they will do it as well.
Okay, cool. So yes, this is just playing again on the, we were screen sharing ChatGPT, screen sharing PowerPoint presentations, other demonstrations of knowledge. We talked about math, being able to screen share your math homework and talk through the parts where you struggled to be able to do that. Anything you can think of that you're in a classroom where you normally would have leaned over the student and pointed at something that they were doing, or had them speak to you and present something, you can do that in your discussion forums too. And that will once again sidestep the ChatGPT thing entirely as you're going into it. Let's come back out and all posts. Remember what other one we have going on here. Course walkthrough. Oh, private reflections. So I know this is an option directly in D2L. So I saw some folks were using D2L. It has a private mode. I don't know if Padlet has a private mode or not. Harmonize has a private mode to where students can't see each other's work. So basically you can create a space that's dedicated to them to be able to participate. And Kelly, if you want to speak how you use this in your class as a private reflection. And
yeah, I do this a lot. So I set up, so my students do their preparatory for their speeches, they're public, you know, just like sometimes they'll do their peer reviews on their introductions or just a section of their speech, but the full speech most of the time will be just for me, and we'll set that up as private. Their first speech sometimes will be for the entire class, but some of their speeches are more geared towards, you know, just me to watch. But then the reflections are always private. Like, how'd you think you did? What did you knock out of the park? What was, you know, and I can gear this as solely private. And I give them the option of, you know, they can type it, they can do it in video. And then I video back. Like I ask them, what kind of comments do you want back from me? Do you want your comment in video form? Would you like for me to type it back? Because not only do I comment back on their video, but I provide them a reflection from me as well. So, you know, I ask, do you want me a podcast feedback to you? Do you want me to type? You know, what do you want me to do? You let me know. I'll do whatever. I'm easy. So I really like this, that it can just be singular to, you know, I can tailor it, but it is just solo to them right within here.
yeah, and I'd say, you know, this getting back to the demonstration of knowledge and sidestepping ChatGPT, we've doing a lot of video and a lot of screen share, but you can actually do purely image-based stuff as well. And so make sure that that student choice that Kelly's talking about is so important. Like if you want your students to actually do something that supports what they are writing, you can do so, right? You can have them pull in whatever they want. And then you can draw on it if you need to, or whatever, and Harmonize anyway. You can draw on it in Padlet, probably not, but I'm sure Padlet has the ability to upload images as well. And obviously your LMS has it to some degree. It's not quite as nicely laid out, but it's there. So if you're trying to teach something that requires any sort of like find this bone break in the X-ray and highlight it, make that a private topic and have them go through. Different than text, or we just can't beat this in enough. It's fine to do text, have text supported with video, have text supported with images, with screen shares, etc. Because then even if they use ChatGPT to arrive at the initial text, they have had to at least consume that content and reflect on it in some way. And Kelly's weekly reflections also make them stop and think, like they didn't just phone it in, going through as well.
Mm-hmm.
As we're going on. Nicole put out another one that you can use to do this, Nearpod's Collaborate boards, which I actually haven't played with. I'll go do that afterwards. So the students can participate on, it looks like a big collaboration board as well. So another option for you.
Oh yeah, like you said, if they're using ChatGPT for things, I will have students like, I know I'm talking about speech again. Sometimes for outlines, I'll say, hey, ask ChatGPT to give you 3 different versions for a speech outline, right? And then let's talk about, you know, and we'll do that in the screen share, you know, based upon this question and this speech, you know, let's look at these 3 different outlines, right? And then are you going to use them? Why? Are there any that were helpful? And then let's analyze, you know, let's break them down even farther. But they're still having to do the speech. They're still having to fill out, you know, I don't use an outline. I don't know if you can tell. I
mean, you sounded like you were well rooted in an outline.
Now that I don't use one, but anyway, they, you know, right? They're still they're having these reflections. They're still talking. They're still, you know, they're editing, and So I think the more that you can do these shares and walk them through the process of talking and parceling this all out and seeing you do it too. I do it for everything I ask them to do. I do. I'm taking this class with them, and I tell them that all the time. And they see me make bonehead mistakes while I'm asking this question. I'll be like, "Oh, that was dumb. That didn't give me anything." Ugh, so.
I love your humility in the class, and I can't, like, she's so human and she's so humble in the class. I'm sure your students love you.
Oh, I don't know
Undoubtedly.
about that, but
Right up until you grade them poorly, then they hate you. But let me see if we missed any here. We did screen share, video responses. Feel free to get your questions in when we're looking at this. The one thing I would like to cover as well is AI as a coach. This is something we've been working on in Harmonize, and you can have your students accomplish to some degree in ChatGPT. The idea being that, like, if you have students who are struggling in your topic, they can take your rubric, they can take your assignment, and they can ask ChatGPT for feedback. And then as long as you say that's okay and you make them reflect on the feedback they got, share the feedback they got, share the revisions they made. We do this inside of Harmonize now. We use the instructor rubric and we point them back to the rubric to say improve on rubric criteria 1 or 3 or something like that. But you can incorporate this into your discussion as well. Take the outline, take the rubric of what I was looking for in an outline, take it over to ChatGPT and say, based on this rubric and this assignment, here's my work. Where could I improve? And it can point them at the different parts of the rubric where they could actually improve. And then once again, maybe use screen share to record that interaction or to record their thoughts on the feedback as they're going with it as well. So there are ways to incorporate AI further along to teach them that AI is a conversation, and to also get them sharing interesting things, because if they are all using AI to get revisions and do different things, this is kind of like your first step into peer review, right? The peer was AI. You can see the feedback. You don't have to agree with the feedback, and maybe you shouldn't agree with all of the feedback. And therefore, having a critical eye and an assistant, if you're not good at having a critical eye, how can you actually do that? And we're seeing more in that come around. Like, we launched our AI coach, and we're seeing lots of students go in and they are just like, give me feedback, and then they go revise, and then they go revise, and then they go revise. And it's so heartwarming, because I'm like, I made that student spend 15 more minutes, and they actually drove their work from a low performance up to a high performance. I'm like, that was phenomenal. And you can accomplish this with ChatGPT by allowing your students to do it, as long as they report what they're doing, so that you can reflect on their learning process, because the learning process in these formative discussions is more important than factual, well, sometimes more important than factual correctness. I won't say that across the board, but this is the place for them to thrash around and learn. Okay.
Kelly?
Let's see. Yep, go ahead.
Yeah.
So Kelly, we have a question in the Q&A. How would you recommend faculty incorporate video discussions in their course without adding too much extra time grading and leaving feedback compared to the text-based discussions?
Well, I always felt like the reading and the typing took more time, honestly. I think that is something, I think you'd have to start with asking them, how much time is that taking you? That's where you need to lead with. But for me, like, that seemed to take more time. Like, pushing play and listening just seems to go so much quicker. So how would I recommend it without adding too much extra time? Well, and if you think about it, typically in those text-based assignments, people are also saying 250 to 500 words, right? So that's so much more to read. But in audio, like, we're talking faster. So 250 to 500 words, I just said, like, how many words and how fast did I talk, right? It's going to go so much quicker. So I think, and just the idea of listening and hearing is so much more engaging than sitting and reading. So, I don't know. I think you're just going to have to become a salesman. I wish. And I think also just showing, really, honestly, showing something, a really good clip, or finding a student that's had this really good experience is my best way. Because for me, if I find a student or a few students that have felt like this helped me as an instructor, I'll do it. This helped you learn, I'm on board. That's all.
Strategies. Yes, some strategies at Harmonize we give. I'm sorry, Kelly, did you have more to?
No, like,
I have a terrible habit of stepping on the last like word of your
No,
sentence
but
because I'm like, oh,
Harmonize has great grading strategies, like for real, that, you know. will help.
where I tell instructors to start when we are doing our trainings and such, I say start with video feedback on assignments. So even if your students are not using video to start with, when we're focusing on instructor presence, I type 80 words a minute, plus mistakes, plus revisions. And like Kelly said, it's more quick to actually, leave. If you're in Canvas, they have a record video and screen capture here that you can do. If you're using Harmonize, it's actually live in the discussion here, so you can record your video straight in line here. But I speak way more quickly than I type. And so if you're really focused on how do I start using video and start modeling this behavior, you can actually come into their discussion post in SpeedGrader and leave a video comment on the thing. And it takes you 20 seconds to leave a video comment. There's almost nothing you can type in 20 seconds that is meaningful. Students love this. Love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. If you can't do it, if you're not using Harmonize, you have to go do this in a discussion and bounce through the posts and actually record a quick video on them for feedback. But then you have to write less grade comments, right? You can just go through and grade if you want, or I mean, in this case, I'm using auto grade because it's an introduction, but you can come through and just be present in the discussion. And I would say it's way more reasonable to be present in the discussion as a mechanism than it is to worry about what you're typing into the grade book.
And that's what I do. I have auto grade on and I have that watch topic on. So when I have that watch topic on, I am alerted, and I have rubrics attached to my assignments. I saw a question about the rubrics. So I have rubrics attached that I've used ChatGPT to create, by the way, through Harmonize, which is really kind of cool. But anyway, so I have the watch topic on. I'm alerted that a student has done a discussion. And so then I go in live and I kind of talk back with them. If they're not on the right track, I can ease them into getting on the right track. If I feel like, oh, they haven't gotten there yet, I can get them there. I don't have to worry about grading then because I'm already getting them there. And then Canvas does the grading or Harmonize does the grading for me. As long as they've commented back and forth and they've done the milestones that I've assigned, I'm already talking to them. I know they're talking to the other students in the course. I'm live within Harmonize. So I don't have to worry about the points. And that's something that's been really handy as in this specific tool. It saved me a lot of time. But I like to talk, I like to be present within my, and I have a lot of it. I'm a faculty trainer. A lot of my faculty, they like to just grade on Sundays, but I have too many students to do that. I cannot imagine spending my entire Sunday grading. So I like to live grade every day.
Very cool. Someone asked about rubrics and how we do this with rubrics. So keep this in mind as well. I covered this in the bullet points, but we haven't touched on it yet. If your discussion prompt says, post once about what you learned this week and comment on each other's posts, they're not gonna participate terribly well. We've built in ChatGPT integration, but you can also do this in ChatGPT directly. Ask it to actually build Bloom's taxonomy appropriate discussion activity for you. And then you pull that in and make sure you edit it. So I asked them to do a reflection on their personal learning. It builds something for me. I can tweak it. When we're looking at the rubrics, we almost always, most LMSs only support a single rubric. Rubrics can be overwhelming for students. So we recommend not doing 2 rubrics because then you're grading against one. The other one is for them to follow up on the comments. Combine those just as simplified rubric criteria. You can use ChatGPT to do this as well. So if you have built an assignment in ChatGPT or put your assignment in ChatGPT, you can ask it to generate the rubric criteria for you, review, edit them, and then ask it to build the full rubric for you as well. So then your students have absolute clarity on what it is that they should be doing. And then, in Harmonize, you can use that to coach inside of Harmonize. If not, then students can take that rubric and really gather information about what they're doing and use ChatGPT once again to drive reflection based on that rubric. But that one rubric contains both all the things that the students need to do, be it their initial post or their video feedback or everything. And then we put it in a simplified format so they're not overwhelmed by the 4x4 rubric. But that way they can actually be able to do it as well. So
there's a question about captions. Did you see that? Are captions automatically generated with the video?
In Harmonize, they are for all student and instructor content. In Canvas, the instructors can have them captioned and the students have to request, and they can only do that if they're using Canvas Studio. Some of the other, I think Padlet was adding auto caption I'm not 100% positive if that's in the free version or not. So it's definitely something to be careful of, because if you do drive into video and you don't have an auto captioning platform, you are going to be leaving some students behind. And so be super cognizant of that. Accessibility is so important. So make sure that they're doing that. Alex actually,
Marcus,
super deep question there. Sorry, David, go ahead.
Yeah, we got a question here about, does Harmonize support API or being able to be used with a LRS?
Yeah, in an LRS, we do caliper so that you can put an LRS. We also have an API, but so yeah, we can talk about that offline if you want. That's a much deeper conversation. So, but yeah, so get yourself a good activity, because like Kelly's tossing out these ideas, use ChatGPT to brainstorm some of the activities, because
Oh my God, yes.
yeah, more fun activity equals better discussion, hands down.
Yeah.
So make sure
I
you do
will
that.
say, just the more if you can start off with some fun discussion right away, and then in that first module, and then something that is substantive that you're doing in your course, but just something that is, just get them doing something in a discussion that isn't, hey, read this and then tell me what you learned in 200 words, and then have your colleague or peers say, oh, cool, I think that what you said is neat. Yay. Oh my gosh.
I agree with Bob. Great point.
Every discussion I have, my students have to be doing something that helps someone in their class. So if it's a research class, hey, you know what, Marcus, you think differently than me, and I have a research paper about PTSD, and I will have you go find an article for me. Like, that's like a baseline, just a really basic, terrible assignment description. But sometimes in a discussion thread, that's what you're doing, and you're my partner, and you're going to find a source for me. So like, use your discussions as ways that students are working together, not just responding to a question.
Yeah, all of this makes it easy. Yeah, it all makes it easier to do RSI, right? You can just poke and nudge and such. So we are 2 minutes from end of webinar. So maybe I'll turn it back over to Caitlin so we can see if there's any questions. I can hang out a little late if need be. But Caitlin, do you have any wrap up you'd like to do?
Yes, thank you. First of all, I'd just like to start with giving a huge thank you to Kelly and Marcus for presenting today, sharing so many amazing and helpful strategies. I know I took away a lot. I definitely want to incorporate that AI story. That looked awesome. So thank you both so much. And thank you all who attended live or who might be watching back the recording. Just a reminder, I will be sending out the recording. So feel free to share it with any of your colleagues that might not have known about it or got to attend today. And lastly, just wanted to invite you to join our upcoming webinars. We've got a jam-packed October with weekly webinars, topics such as student readiness for college, supporting your instructional designers, how to talk to students suspected of cheating, leading academic change, the impact of professional development on course quality and student success, and always the ever-present AI, creating effective assessments in the age of AI, which you've heard a little bit about that today. So I popped a link into the chat if you're interested in learning any more about any of those. And just one more huge thank you to our presenters and to you all. Hope you have a fantastic rest of your day.
Thank
Thank
you
you so much. Take care, everybody.
Bye.